Hey, it's your favorite mindset coach, Marissa, and I am so grateful that you are here today to join me. So, whether you are listening on my podcast, Teacher Mindset with Marissa E., or you are hanging out with me on my YouTube channel, Teacher_Mindset, you are going to get so much value. So, if you are a teacher, were a teacher, want to be a teacher, know a teacher, this is the podcast for you because what do we do here? We focus on helping teachers. That is the goal. I was a teacher. Now I'm a mindset coach for teachers. And I find people in the education space, whether they are teachers or were teachers or have some other place in the education space, to help you save time, energy, practice self-love, avoid burnout, look at your worth, and just navigate regular challenges that teachers are encountering today. So I would encourage you to subscribe, especially on the podcast. Put a like in there so that we can push up in the algorithm, because the higher we are, the more teachers we can help. That is my ultimate goal, is to bring love and positivity to so many teachers out there. So if that sounds like something you would be interested in, then without further ado, let's get into it. Hey everyone. So today's guest in education is this amazing woman called Michelle Steiner. And Michelle went through her entire primary school career with learning disabilities. And because of that, I'm sure you can imagine, a long time ago, there was a lot of bullying around learning disabilities, and teachers didn't quite know how to work with kids in the class. So she had to overcome so many challenges. So we are talking about that today, and also about how she was able to start advocating for herself, how she had that one teacher that made all the difference. And today she's not only a photographer, she's a speaker, she's a writer, she's got her own blog, she's a paraprofessional, which is like a learning support assistant in a school, and she is just thriving. So if you have a child or a student who possibly is working with learning difficulties, this is the interview for you. And remember, if you have any interest in education and you are looking for the positive side of things, please like and subscribe. Go check out the podcast as well if you want, if you're keen to, like, you prefer audio. That's also great. But without any me saying anything else, let's get into it. Hey, teachers and parents. So this interview is for you if you are a teacher who has a child with disabilities in your class and you want to know how to best support that child or those students, if you have more than one, and or possibly you are a parent of a child with a disability and are looking for some advice. So we've got the perfect person for you here with us today. Today, we are learning from Michelle Steiner, who, despite having a learning disability, is an educator, writer, speaker, and talented photographer. And I definitely encourage you to check out her website, www.michellesmission.net. We're going to put that in the show notes so you can check out some of her incredible photography. Michelle, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
Oh, I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Michelle, I just wanted to start off with having you maybe tell our listeners about sort of growing up with your disability and, how your story sort of unfolded throughout primary school and maybe if things changed in high school. Yeah, just tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I was diagnosed with having a learning disability in kindergarten. So it became
Okay.
a lifestyle for me. I can remember when I started school, I was my parents' first child. So they didn't have a lot to base development on. And when I was in school, my kindergarten teacher really saw me struggling with numbers, counting. I remember I couldn't tie my shoes. Dot to dot pages were hard. And socially, I struggled as well. Being an only child for many years really made it difficult with socializing with other kids. And
Mm-hmm.
the teacher recommended that I get tested for having a learning disability. And sure enough, after I was tested, I had one. It was determined that. And I can remember one of the things that they were telling my dad at that age that they knew was I was not going to be a mathematician. We knew that whenever I was a very young child. And I had to repeat kindergarten the following year in a new school. It was still a public school in our district, but it was a different one. And I also began to receive specialty instruction and accommodations. And the early years of school were really frustrating for me. I can remember just wanting to learn and I would try and I just couldn't get it. And that was really difficult for me. And then
Mm,
socially, it was also hard because I went to a very small school district where I couldn't blend in. I couldn't hide that I was going to learning support for classes. Everybody
right.
knew. And differences really weren't celebrated during that time period. So I really struggled during those years. And I can remember thinking as a young child that life was always going to be difficult. It was never going to get any better. And my learning disability was just going to be really hard on me. And eventually, a lot of the support started to work. I was able to be in regular ed classes for science, social studies, and reading. They found that I could read really well. And I still had accommodations of having the test read aloud to me and extended test time. Academically, it got even easier as I went throughout high school. That is when I was in all regular ed classes eventually, except for
Okay.
resource and math. And I was doing well. I made honor roll, and it got a lot harder for me socially. There
Okay,
was
I just want to ask you with the academic side of it first,
mhm.
was most of the challenges that you faced with math specifically, or did it also have to do with you like processing information, or what were sort of the key areas where you were struggling there?
Sure, math was the big area. We
Okay,
knew that I was not, yeah, I could not do math very well, and I messed up a lot of steps and things like that. But and I also struggled with processing too. That was
okay,
another. I had a reading comprehension. I was a great reader. I could read all the words on the page. I loved reading. My dad read to me from the time I was a young child. I could
right,
write. My handwriting wasn't great, but I was trying to remember those key details from tests. That was really hard. And just trying to understand what I was reading could be difficult. So we did have those issues, but eventually I was able to be able to compensate for that and be
right.
more like yeah with accommodations. But the math that never that never worked out that well. And my eye hand coordination was also difficult too. I can
Okay.
remember gym class was a nightmare for me, and just I would flinch every time that a ball would come in contact with me. And when I was a young child, of course, it was just, okay, you're not good at this. Of course, my peers weren't happy. But when it became older and we had gym class, and I can remember it was a lot harder because people wanted to win.
Right, right.
And
I
yeah,
was gonna say, do you feel that, if you have like if you are an instructor doing gym, for instance, like that, do you think it's better to still have those children playing the game, or is it better to give them maybe a different position if you know that they're actually it's actually challenging, not because they don't want to do it, but because they can't do it in certain instances? Do you think that the teacher should actually be like, okay, well, you can keep score? Would you have wanted that, or would you have preferred just to play?
well, I mean, I'm not great at keeping score either. What really worked was my senior year. It
Yeah,
took my gym teacher 4 years to figure out that I was not going to be good at playing volleyball and that that these girls wanted to win. So she had me go ride the exercise bike. And I loved it. And I would lift weights. I would ride the bike. And that's something I still love to do today. I will go to the gym
amazing.
and do, yeah, treadmill, competitive fitness. I love doing group exercise classes because that's something that you're not competing with somebody else. You're in a competition with yourself. And I think that is key. And I've also seen through my work in the school system, once they get up to our high school level, as a whole, they can pick what kind of class they want. They can pick if they want to have a traditional gym class where they play games, they can do a
Right.
conditioning class, and they can also do what they call lifestyle fitness. And they can play bocce ball, they can walk. And the really beautiful thing about this, it's not just students that have disabilities that are in this program, other students that may not be as athletic
Yeah, that
and
would have been me. I would have been
yeah,
there for
can
sure.
choose to do that. Yeah. And it works out so nice to have that choice.
Yeah. I wish we would have had that choice because I hated the competition. I hated when we had
Yeah,
to, I was never good. And, you just feel, I wish we had had that option of like, okay, well, if you guys want to be over here on the bike or lifting some weights, like
yeah,
go there and do that. Because I think that is a really good idea. You need to sort of give kids that choice these days because it doesn't feel nice when your team doesn't want you there because they know you're not great.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
That's it,
agreed.
yeah. So you were saying in high school it became more socially difficult. Is that through like with bullies predominantly or with the academic side? And what did you do to sort of, help your mindset? What did you say to yourself? How did you deal with it?
Bullying was really hard for me. The social part was the most difficult whenever I was in high school. A
Yeah.
lot of the peer groups became more defined. When I was younger, it was, oh, you're not invited to my birthday party, or I don't want to play with you on the playground. But when I got into high school, I could see these peer groups, and everybody seemed to have a friend or a group, and a lot of them would pick on me. That seemed to be their common goal, was to make my life really difficult in high school. So what really helped me was I found an arts program that was in a town very nearby that had a
Okay.
lot of kids from another school district that were involved with things. And I can remember I got involved with writing for their newsletter, and I did
Oh,
some drama with their group and some other really fun activities. And the thing that really impressed me was nobody knew me, that I didn't have that reputation of being the outcast that I carried on from kindergarten and got progressively worse as I went throughout school. I
of
had
course.
acceptance. And that really helped me whenever I was in my school and I would have students that were picking on me. I'd be like, I really don't, I didn't care as much because I knew what it was like to be accepted and other people liked me. And that raised my self esteem. And I spent more time with them. After that group stopped meeting, I found an adult writing group in the community with
Okay.
peers that were just a few years older than I was, and they were adults, and I would take a lot of my writing there. And I can remember I wrote some bad poetry at that time and some other really cringeworthy things I didn't want to write. But I had a friend that encouraged me, you should really write about having a disability. And it took me years before I had that courage to
That
do that.
courage, yeah.
Our group, that writing group, still meets once a month, and
Wow.
I'm involved in the lives of other people. We're just involved in each other's lives throughout the years. We've been in weddings and birthday parties and trips, and I have that connection. And I think that is what really helped to save me, was having people that did accept me. And I found my tribe, and I found people that shared those
Yeah.
interests with me.
That's such great advice. It's so powerful because I think as a parent, you get scared of trying to bring your
Mm-hmm.
child out into the world. You don't want them to get bullied, you don't want them to get hurt. But if they do have an interest in something, try to find a group of people with that same interest because
Yes.
when that happens, it's about the interest. It's not about who you are. It's really about,
Yeah.
oh, you can draw, I can draw. Let's practice together, right? So
Right.
I think that's fantastic. And obviously, help blossom your creativity, just like the blossoms behind you. So beautiful. I know if you're listening on the podcast, you can't see, but Michelle has a background of just these gorgeous flowers. Is this one you picked or is this a photo you took?
This is one that I picked.
Okay.
We haven't had a bad winter in Pennsylvania, but it's still kind of dreary. And I picked some really pretty flowers, a background with flowers on it, just to kind of brighten things up until spring comes.
Yeah, it's perfect too because Valentine's Day is coming and you've got this like
Yes.
mirage of pinks and reds and just these gorgeous pinks. So it's perfect. I love it.
Thank you.
At the time in when you were growing up and especially in high school, Michelle, who would you say were some of the more influential people in your life at that time?
I can say that was definitely the writing group with a lot of people that were older than I was because
Okay.
I could see the other side and I could see like acceptance. I think that was thing. My parents, they never gave up on me. That was the big
Yeah.
thing. They always advocated for me. And I can remember I had a student teacher that made a big difference too. I
Okay,
knew
tell
that
us
I
about
wanted to
her.
go to college. Yeah, I wanted to go to college. And a lot of people didn't think I could. I had a learning support teacher that said, I don't think you can do that because of your math disability. And she recommended a trade school. And it's just nothing there interested me. But this student teacher that I had told me, you can go to college because you know how to study and work hard. And she was telling me stories about people that were at her school that had learning disabilities and were doing great. And
Wow.
that changed a lot of how I had that perspective on life. And sometimes when I was at college and it was really difficult, that was the voice that I heard in my head that I could do it.
Oh, amazing. So sometimes it just takes that one person, right? Saying you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
You are absolutely, talented enough to go forward and serve the world with your purpose, you know? So that's
Yes, definitely.
fantastic. And I don't even know if you even really need math to get into college these days. I'm not sure, but I don't think so. I know here in
No.
South Africa you don't. Um,
Right. There's
yeah.
ways around it because
Yeah.
a lot of times people think, oh, I got to take SATs. I have to get a really good score on it. And that was one of the things when I did meet with an OBR counselor. We have a federal program that pays for you to go to college if you have a qualifying
Okay.
disability, pays for uh, the testing to see if you do indeed qualify. And one of the reps that talked to me said, oh, okay. Well, why don't we have you go to community college for a few years? I mean, you're able to go in. They take just anybody that applies. I mean, you have to go through testing. And then a lot of colleges and universities look at how well you did at a community college. So I thought, oh, that's a really good way to get
It's a
in.
great idea.
Yeah, and that's sometimes the thing. Yeah, you don't have to do that to get in. And even when you get into a college, a lot of times it's really good if you have a disability to make sure that they have disability accommodations. That's the first thing you have to do. And it's also I had to learn this when you get there, you have to
Hmm.
use them. And that's on your shoulders. It's not on the shoulders of your parents anymore. That's up to you to use them. And there is a stigma in a lot of places that I've experienced with using them that they're cheating. But if I don't use them, I really struggle. But if I use them, it makes it a lot better for me because I'm doing what I need to do to help myself.
Well, I think the idea is like I've taught many students with concessions,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the idea is that when you get out into the real world, you're going to find something where it works with how you learn, how
Yeah,
you are in the world, right? So
right.
you don't want to, it's like a detriment if you force that child to do the test or do the assessment
Yeah,
without those concessions because they maybe can't write as well. So now they're not as fast,
right.
right? Doesn't mean they don't know
Yeah,
the work.
exactly.
So you're testing, like, you're not allowing them the opportunity that the same students have. So I definitely, yeah, I agree with concessions. I'm all for concessions. I don't see them
Yes, exactly.
as cheating at all. I would say if you met a teacher today, I mean, and I know you teach, and we'll talk about that in a minute, who
Mm-hmm.
has a child in their class with a learning disability, what advice would you give them to best support that child?
The best advice I can give them is to meet the student where they're at. I think that is just such what we have to do. If a
Yeah.
student needs accommodations, offer those. But also in your instruction, I think it's also really important that you have a variety of different ways to teach things. Some students might learn better with seeing things, others learn better with hearing. And I think it's teaching that, but it's also addressing the needs that our students have. If we have a student that has a lot of reading things, putting them in a regular ed classroom may not always be the best idea, but it could work as well with accommodations. It's just learning to see what the student needs and going there and giving them that individualized plan for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think also doing what your student teacher did for you, right? Just believing
Mm-hmm.
in them, just being like, you can
Yep.
do this. and it doesn't, and look at the small wins. It
Yeah,
doesn't have to
exactly.
be just because your
Hmm.
friend got this result, like you got 5% higher than you did last time. I mean, that is a win, right? So really
Exactly.
showing students how to change their mindset around, working with what they've got, which is the key. You have to have strategies based around what
Yes.
what talents and
Hmm.
weaknesses you've been blessed with, and go that way. I was going to ask you, with regards to your mindset, has it always been positive? And if not, I imagine it must have been difficult if you had bullies when you were younger, but what sorts of things do you say to yourself to help change it? Or even what would you say, tell a child, right? Try to say this to help yourself, because there are bullies everywhere.
Yes. I would say with my mindset that I focus on the things I can do rather than the things that I can't. If I
Nice.
sit down and try to do something with math or science, I'm not going to be fulfilled or happy. I'm probably going to be really frustrated. But if I sit down with a good book or I write or I take a picture, that really helps me to have more of a positive mindset. And in regards to bullies, I try to give a lot of strategies of how what worked for me. And I think that has helped me have that insight. I can remember when I was working one on one with a student who was being bullied,
Mm.
and these girls were not wanting her to sit with her at lunch, or they were being really rude to her. And when I came to get her after lunch, I said, okay, I was listened and I said, you can report it if you want to, but my advice would be that you find a different place to sit at. And if the girls come up and ask you why, you just tell them you're looking for some different tables. And the student did go to the office and told, which is fine. And I can remember sitting in there with them, and the principal was saying, yeah, that's a good idea. Change your tables around. And because we're always going to have people in life, especially when you have a disability, who are, whether it's intentional or unintentionally,
Right.
going to say things that are going to be upsetting. And I think it's just learning in life how to handle that.
Yes, absolutely, because it really is a life skill,
Mm-hmm.
being able to deal with those types of people. And I know you were saying your parents were huge advocates for you. So what are some of the most important things that a parent can do for their child if they have a learning disability, would you say?
I think the most important thing they can do is not give up on their child. My parents didn't give up on me, and that made all the difference. They were the ones that spent a lot of long, tearful sessions studying with me. They worked with my teachers on what they could do at home, and I think that was a valuable education for my family too on what learning disabilities were. And they also advocated. That was a big step for me during this time. I didn't get to go to any of my IEP meetings, the individual education plan ones.
Right.
But now students get that opportunity. However, before they would go to a meeting, they would ask me, hey, we're going to your IEP meeting. Is there anything that you want us to talk about?
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And we would bring up concerns, or we bring up things that I wanted to do, especially post-secondary, because
Right.
there was a lot that my parents knew that I had dreams and things that I wanted to do, but they wanted to see what options were out there so I could be able to do that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, actually asking you, right? Like, what should we bring up? What
Mm-hmm.
should we discuss?
Yep.
100%. So today, whereabouts do you teach? What kind of students do you teach today? Or tell me about your job today.
Sure. I'm a teacher's aide, a paraeducator in a school. I work with students that are in sixth grade, and
Okay.
a lot of our students have autism. Some of them have learning disabilities, ADHD, and I get a chance to work in general ed classrooms with our students. And sometimes it's like hearing a recording of myself at that age. I hate my disability. I wish I didn't have it. I feel stupid. And I get that opportunity to be that voice to say, you're not stupid. Your brain is wired differently. And I show them how they can advocate for themselves and be able to help themselves out as well, along with helping them with their work. And all the kids know, do not ask me for help with math. Sometimes that presents challenges for students and sometimes staff that doesn't know me. It can be hard because people don't see my disability, but I'm at peace with that. I'm at peace
Yeah.
that I can't do that, but I can help them with English. I can help them with reading, writing,
Yeah, I was to say
and just
writing for
sometimes
sure.
listening to them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is what sometimes they need. Need. That's all
Hmm.
they need is for you, someone to listen. What does it look like advocating for yourself as a student? So can you give us like an example of that, where that's happened with a student or something you've told a student how to do that?
Yes, I can remember I had a student a few years ago that really needed help in the classroom, and she was afraid to ask for it. And we have a wonderful team that will go into some of our study halls that are specifically designed for students that have disabilities, and they'll offer assistance. And that is great, especially if the teacher doesn't have a para in the room and we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out a worksheet that we've never seen. So sometimes that is really helpful. And I knew he would come in, but I said, it's okay. I said, go up and ask him for help. I'll go with you. And that student was able to say, I need help with that. And after that point, she was able to ask for help on her own. She wasn't afraid anymore. And I think that was a really nice thing. I also have worked with students. I can remember one where the book bag was a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go through every week and we would organize her papers into folders and mark the folders of the classes. And the last semester, she asked me, how do you spell extra? Because she was organizing her backpack herself and she knew how to do it
Wow.
by that time. So I think that that
So
is
good.
one of the greatest things is when I get to see them be successful.
Yeah, 100%. I love that when you teach, and those are the moments
Mhm.
that you can focus on to also help with staying positive, right? So if you've
Yeah.
had a bad day or it's hasn't been
Hmm.
exactly according to plan, which is a lot of days, you can look at, right? Oh, but this happened with this student, and this student, like for the first time, like knew how to organize her bag, right? And I did that
Hmm.
because I helped her
Yep.
create the wiring in her brain to know how to do that. So
Hmm.
it's very makes you feel like so proud of yourself, right? Um, I wanted to ask you, so how did you, because now you've done public speaking as well
Hmm.
as writing and photography. So let's start with what came first, the writing, the photography, or what was yeah, I know you've always been an educator, but writing or photography, what was first, or speaking?
Writing came first. My
Okay.
dad saw a story about a dinosaur that I wrote when I was in third grade, and he said, wow, this is really good. And that encouraged me to write more because I thought, wow, I'm good at something because everything else I tried, I was not good at. And I was really discouraged. But when I heard that, that was just so encouraging to me. And that just led me to want to write more and read more and to have that. So that was the first thing that came about. The
Okay.
photography came about later, and that was through a lot of encouragement through mentors and other people in my life. I can remember thinking, I'm not really good at art. And can remember people were saying,
Yeah.
oh, people with learning disabilities, they're great with art. And I don't have, I have limited hand dexterity that we didn't find out till I was an adult. And I can remember just feeling frustrated, but I took a picture at prom of a tree in the venue that we were at. Uh, and my peers were like, "Oh, why'd you take a picture of a tree?" And I showed it to an older woman in our writing group, my prom pictures, and she looked at that tree and said, "This shows perspective."
Ah,
And
I love
I
that.
didn't believe her or a lot of my other friends who encouraged me all those years. But I started taking pictures, and I remember I was at a wedding, and we went to a graveyard, just a historic one to visit,
Okay.
and I took a picture of these cemetery angels. And I had a friend that saw them and she said, wow, this is really good. And this friend was very particular. And I thought, if she likes it, I must have done
Right.
something right. So I entered it into a show and I think I got an honorable mention. And that
Congrats.
encouraged me to do more and to enter more things into shows and take more pictures. And one of the things that came out with the photography is I'm not able to drive because of my disability. But when I'm on my walk, I'll get to take pictures of flowers. And people say, you bring out the details in flowers that I would miss. And I also do this with my husband. I'll be in the car and I'll be like, did you see that? He's like, no, I'm driving. And if I was sitting in the passenger seat, I wouldn't be able to notice a lot of those details.
I
And
love that. That's so true.
and that also is what I get a chance to take photos on my walk. And I couldn't do that if I was driving. So that's an advantage to having not being able to drive. And I get the chance to post those pictures on my blog, and I get to put them, they've been published in magazines, and I do sometimes do art galleries as well.
That is fantastic. I love that. I'm always looking for those shifts in mindset, right? Because that is the
Mm-hmm.
perfect example of where you could be negative about something and be like, well, I
Yeah.
can't do this. So now this is, useless. But instead, it's all about turning it around and being like, well,
Yep.
okay, I can't do this, but now I can do this. I
Yeah.
can see these beautiful pictures. I can go for these walks instead of driving. So that is fantastic. I love that. I love that. Tell me, so I'm intrigued with the public speaking. So what was it like the first time? Like, how did you get invited to public speak? Where did you speak? Was it scary? How did it feel?
I know that I started speaking when I was very young, not about having a disability, but in my parents' church, they would have our students would pick a Sunday and they
Okay.
would do reading. So that was the very first thing. And I could read really well. And that was one of the things that they encouraged me to do that. When I was in school, everybody knew that I could get up in front of the class and talk, and they encouraged me. I think the only
Amazing.
thing I had to do was slow down a little bit, but that was something I could do. And everybody could notice that I could get up in front of a crowd, and it wasn't scary for me to be able to do this, to talk necessarily. I mean, sometimes, yeah, a little nervous. And when I was in high school, speech classes,
Yeah.
I started out with an A, and I got a higher percentage as I went through that. So I was always really good with standing up and talking. I've done plays too where I've gone out and did that. And I haven't had an
Yeah.
issue necessarily with that. But when I first started talking about my disability, I spoke at a women's empowerment breakfast right
Okay.
before COVID. And I can remember I was speaking and I was a little nervous and I dropped my cards. And I think that was embarrassing, but I went and I talked. And the next one I did, I spoke at a disability symposium, and that I that worked out really well. In fact, I have had a relationship with a lot of the people from there, and had some opportunities to do
Right.
some contract work with them after a few years. And that was
Cool.
really great to be able to do that and
Yeah,
help
so you make
facilitate.
connections, right?
Yeah,
And that, yeah,
right.
I want to go back to when you dropped the card. So when you dropped the cards, because that would be a break moment for a lot of people. Did you just say to yourself, "Oh well, I'm just going to speak from the heart," or I'm going to try and put them back together, or like, what did you do?
I just picked them up and just started to speak again. I was scared. I was like, oh, I just want to crawl in a hole. And I wanted the floor to open up. And these women were wonderful, though. After I did it, they said, that was awesome. And they started talking about their experiences. And some of them told me, don't give up. You are the real thing. You can do
Yeah.
this. And I thought that was just really sweet. I think I picked the best group to do that. But I know that was the very first time I did it. But
Wow.
and that made the difference.
It does. I think sometimes like once it sort of breaks the tension a little bit, right? So
Yeah.
and then you're even more authentic after that happens.
Mhm.
It's that real side of people. And that's what people like. They want you to be real. That's cool because
Yes.
I also want to break into the public speaking space. So I'll remember that if anything happens in the beginning, I'm just like, oh, I'll just make a joke about it
Yeah.
and um
Right. Exactly. And then we move on.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What tips would you give someone like me who wants to get into public speaking? Like, would you say just sort of like be yourself or practice, or what do you think?
But also just to be yourself too, and to just go on as many as you possibly can. I do a lot of reaching out to people. There's a lot of Facebook groups that are about podcasts, people looking for them, people that have their own. I would reach out for that and just go on the interviews and see. Definitely, especially if they have a time where you meet beforehand and see if you're a good match.
Yeah.
Sometimes that I am a good match and we have a great conversation like we are having now. And other
Yeah.
times we just may not be right for each other, and that's okay too. And I think it's just putting yourself out there and being who you are and sharing your story.
I really like that advice. I never actually thought of that. I have, since I'm doing the podcast, I have thought about going on other people's podcasts, but
Hmm.
from so it's actually excellent advice
Yeah.
for someone who wants to get into public speaking. Don't feel like you first have to start speaking on a stage, right? You could
Yeah.
easily just go on a podcast and have an interview and speak that way to get sort of the practice and the
Yeah.
confidence.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would love to speak in public as well. I mean, there are definitely opportunities that
Yeah.
come up, and to try for those too and see when people have conferences, see when somebody needs a speaker at their event. And now with uh, COVID, we understand, and people are, now that things are getting back to somewhat of what it was like before, we're able to have that under people are having events. So that's definitely something in the future I'd like to try, is to get back into doing some in-person stuff, because I think that's important too, to have that connection.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, well, you definitely have to let me know when you're out and about. If you're ever in South Africa, then I'll definitely come see you.
Yes, I would love to.
Before we get into like our final thoughts today, Michelle, I wanted to know what, with being in nature, I think a lot of people are, we're often told, you know, how nature can really change the way we feel, change the way we think. Why do you think that is? As someone who's in nature quite a lot, what changes with you when you're in nature? Why is it such a benefit? And we should actually be trying to spend a little bit of time in nature every day.
I think the benefit with that is when you're in nature, that helps you to be able to see new things, see new
Hmm.
perspective. I think that gives a good thing. You're out. It also is nice to have the sun on your face. It's nice to just be out there, and to have that connection, and to be able to notice details too. I think that's important, to just pause and to be able to stop, because life can be really busy, but if you take time to smell the roses, there's a lot of benefit to that.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. I know. I hope people listen to that because I really think it's so important for your mindset to just take out that little bit of time, get away from a screen and really appreciate, right, what's around you. And it doesn't have to be, it can be just outside, like around your neighborhood even.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so as, you know, someone who's a writer and you know, an excellent writer, are there any particular books that you would recommend that have either maybe changed the way you look at things or that you would recommend for personal or professional development or anything, any book recommendations?
Yes, as a person with a disability, one of the things that has changed it is learning outside the lines. I think that has, I think it was Jonathan Moody. I think that has changed how I've definitely thought about having a learning disability, because it's somebody else that has had that disability that has gone through that. That has really changed a lot of my perspective on that. And for
Amazing.
fiction,
Mhm.
Jodi Picoult, any of her books are wonderful if you want to get a perspective of both sides of an issue or the character. And I think that's important too.
Yeah. And just as an aside, funny enough, I just saw Jodi Picoult pop up on my TikTok, which
Oh,
people were like
wow.
really surprised. They're like, Jodie Picoult on TikTok, what? Yeah, and she
That's
was like, she was talking about her book, and it was, yeah, it was really
mhm.
cool. So I've read a few of her books, and she is an outstanding writer, definitely. Okay, so speaking of mindset, Michelle, what is one thing that you do to stay calm if things are starting to get chaotic?
One of the things that I love to state that I try to do is I'll try to take a deep breath. That's always really helpful to get my mind back to where it needs to be at. I also, exercise is really important. So sometimes if things get chaotic, or I feel that I need a break, sometimes just having that chance to go and to walk, if I can
Yeah.
get just away for a few minutes. I also love to work out. That's another big thing too. You can always tell my Fitbit if it's been a really rough week or a really
Yeah.
rough day, because that's when I sometimes get a lot of steps in, and
Yep.
we cover a lot of miles. I mean, that That's something too. But I also think it's focusing on what I can do and what I'm good at. I think that helps to empower me in a situation, because sometimes it's really easy to get wrapped up in everything that's wrong or negative, and that sometimes we don't see the good, or we don't see what are the steps I can change, because there's a lot of things with having a disability that is out of my control,
Right.
but I can control how I think about the situation.
Yeah, that's actually really powerful because I'm just thinking if you're in a classroom and there's like it's pretty chaotic, and stepping back and
Mhm.
say, okay, what can I actually do right now? What is
Yep.
within my control, right? I can remove myself. I can
Hmm.
walk out of the room for a second,
Yep.
right? If I feel I'm going to start yelling, I can just walk out of the room for a
Yep.
minute, or I can, speak to one student and tell them to take their group
Hmm.
outside, right? To
Yep.
just remove like
Exactly.
six kids, you
Yeah.
are within your, so to take a moment back, I really like that. I wish I'd had that advice 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Because I would have used it.
Oh, and it took me a while to use that and to know when to just walk out of a situation for a few
Yeah.
seconds.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because that is within your control. I think we often
Hmm.
think as teachers, like you have to like sort of yell about a situation, or you have to get everything back under like the umbrella, but you don't.
Hmm.
You have to actually say to yourself, what can I control right now? What
Yep.
can I do?
Exactly.
Because if I start
Hmm.
yelling, it's going to make things worse.
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
that's excellent advice. So how do you move yourself if you do find yourself possibly getting into a negative mindset? How do you move yourself into a positive mindset? It's the same kind of idea, but what I can do, is there anything else?
One of the things, I give myself things to look forward to.
Oh, I
So if
like
I know
that.
I'm having a really rough week at work, my husband and I love to travel, where we like to go places, even around in our community. So I think to myself, oh, we're going to the museum this weekend, but I got to get through my work week to get to that point. Or I'm going to the garden, or I can go and do a lot of things that I look forward to. And I think that helps to motivate me. It's like, okay, these are the
Yeah.
things that we got to do to, get through that. But there's some happiness on the other side.
Yeah, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I like that's
Hmm.
great. Yeah. And even just, yeah, oh, I'm going to spend time with, this person this weekend. I can't
Yeah.
wait. And how's that
Hmm.
going to feel? Like even trying to put yourself in the feeling to kind of bring
Yeah.
your energy up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
so good. And Michelle, what three things are you grateful for today?
I am definitely grateful for my husband. He has been wonderful. I'm grateful for all the wonderful friends that I have, and I'm also grateful for my family.
Oh, that's beautiful. Today, I am super grateful for this fan, which has been keeping me cool as I've been doing this interview, which has been great. I've loved it. So yeah, sometimes I learned from a previous interview to be also grateful for those little things. So now I'm looking at my
Yes.
desk in a totally different way.
Right.
Well, Michelle, am just so grateful that you came on the show today and I got to talk to you. It was so wonderful, your insights and, the advice you gave. And I really appreciate you for helping young people out there with learning disabilities to believe in themselves and, and just recognize that their disability is like a superpower and that there are so many other things that they can do that maybe someone else
Hmm.
wouldn't be able to do, and you being able to help them recognize those things is so powerful. So I'm just thank you so much, and I just wish you a really wonderful 2024.
Oh, thank you so much. I wish you a wonderful year as well.
Thank you. I didn't ask about where to find you online. Do you want me to put that question in? Because we can quick.
Yes, you
Okay,
could
so
put that in there.
let's do it now. So Michelle, tell me, where is the best place for the listeners or the viewers to find you online?
You can find me at my blog, michellesmission.net, and I'm also on Facebook and Instagram as well.
And what's your handle on Facebook and Instagram? Is it just your name or?
I can put the link for that because yeah,
Perfect.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
let's put the
then
links in the show notes, and
thank
then
you. It would
if
be a
someone
lot.
wants to.
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
amazing. We'll
Thank you.
definitely do that. Cool. And I hope we'll chat again soon or keep in contact or whatever. It's been really
Yes,
wonderful.
yeah. Oh, thank you so much. It's been great talking with you.
Take care. Have a great day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.